rep your third favourite trail and ultramarathon podcast while keeping cool and breezy in a DCR technical trucker hat, pleasing Woodland Vista, and one size fits most. Out now for $59.99 plus postage and packaging with a discount for DCR aid station paid subscribers. You'll find the code in the newsletter available from the Dirt Church Radio website, www.dirtchurchradio.com.
It actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does look pretty good. It looks very good, actually.
It does.
I'm stoked with it. And they're flying out the door, and lots and lots of people.
Limited supply.
Limited supply. And the people who've bought them love them, so get your mitts on one.
And they're off. Here we go.
Further Faster, the best independently owned outdoor store in the known universe. Whether you are heading out on climbing, paddling, tramping, running adventures, look no further than Further Faster for all your gear and expertise needs over the summer. Head to 57A Buchan Street, Sydenham, Otutahi, Christchurch, or hit them up at www.furtherfaster.co.nz.
We got something like Further Faster, they're in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious. Go to Further Faster now.
Oh, Further Faster, they're in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious.
Go to Further Faster now.
Dirt Church Radio. Episode 297 of Dirt Church Radio, Trail and Ultramarathon Running Podcast. I'm Matt Raymond.
And I am Eugene Bingham. Far out, forgot my name there for a second. Tēnā koutou katoa. No, mate, haere mate. We made it.
We did. Back at the reserve.
Yes, the car park studio. How you going, Matt Raymond?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm bouncing back after that viral illness last week, which knocked the stuffing out of me. But sometimes it's almost worth being sick to feel better. You know, that that sense of well-being. I'm not advocating people go out there and
go around licking door handles.
Yeah, that's right.
If only I could get sick.
Feel that sweet recovery.
Yeah.
But good. Spent the week reflecting on even more mistakes that I've made after our podcast with Ali and Kerry.
Yes.
Just
that was a fun episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have post-podcast regrets, thinking, am I ever going to look my neighbours in the eyes ever again? Have a listen to that episode if you want to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it was a fun episode. I enjoyed it. And yeah, the adventures those guys have been on.
Yeah.
Holy hecker.
Absolutely. They've put themselves into some scrapes.
They certainly have. Yeah. Anyway, hey, look, just a quick shout out. Don't forget our live show coming up Tuesday, 29th of October, 7 o'clock at the Small Gods Tap Room in Mount Eden, Auckland, that's where the
Beer Jerk
Run Club goes from, by the way. So you can actually jump in and go for a run with them beforehand as well.
Absolutely.
It's part of the deal. You don't have to pay for that bit. But anyway, yes. So speaking of, there's tickets, $20. Proceeds going to Kia Mau Kia Ora, which is Dr. Inia Raumati and his partner Vicky's foundation. We're going to be getting Inia up on stage to have a chat about his mission to run 8 self-supported multi-day races on 8 continents this year. But yeah, lots of fun and frivolity of our usual live show.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. And I think when you think about what Enya's doing, you reflect on the difficulty of it. And yes, on the one hand, you could say, he's getting off around the world doing these races. They're incredibly difficult. He does the self-supported section of them. So it's not like he's got a little Sherpa with him or anything like that, or someone setting up his tent, a little donkey. Or miniature horse. Download subscribe to the newsletter. And then he's working in an emergency department. And my God, I did 3 clinical shifts in an emergency department this week because we've been super short-staffed. And I can't imagine how people continue to work in that space all the time. The amount of difficulty and challenge and pressure that is going through that. So this is it's not a glamorous environment. It's not like anything you've seen on television. It is a grind. So yeah, he's in and out of the fire. So you can't sort of understate the difficulty of what the man's doing. So come along,
But
support
hell,
him.
he can tell some stories.
He can tell some stories.
Holy
he can.
hecker, it's going to be fun. And if you can't make it along in person to Tamaki, you can access a special live YouTube link brought to you by Runners with Beards. So that's, you can get all the details in the link in our show notes.
Absolutely.
And newsletter.
This week, I spoke to Stephen Parker, and Stephen's a runner, he's an academic, and he's someone who has well and truly fallen in love with the Backyard Ultramarathon format, so much so that he wrote a book about it called There's No Finish, the Backyard Ultra Story, which launches in all formats on October 12th, so just around when this podcast will be out. Stephen is such an enthusiastic student of the sport, and this was an interesting and useful conversation about the history of the backyard and what has led to its popularity rise. Stephen, to his credit, was upfront when we discussed some of the challenges that it faces moving forward in terms of gender equity and the lack of rigor around standardization of terrain, verification of records, etc., etc. And I think that anyone who decides to push go on a project like this, writing a book by yourself, putting it out, and for even more punishing, he's self-doing the audiobook, deserves kudos, and I really hope that this book does well. And this is a great conversation, so look forward to bringing it to you later.
But first, greatest run ever.
Greatest run ever.
Greatest Run Ever, brought to you by Squadron. Give their 4-week special coaching trip trial a go. You can find the link on the website, which is www.dirtchurchradio.com. This is the part of the show where we ask you to write into us and tell us your greatest run ever. It doesn't have to be a race or a mountain summit. Might just be a run around the block, something that's sung to you for some reason. Send it in to us at dirtchurchradio@gmail.com. And this is a return GRE from Stefan Pulpatel. Beautifully written. I was on my Wednesday run and listening to your wonderful episode with Gareth Morris on the Bob Graham round when I was seemingly inexplicably moved to tears. The benefit of being out in the arms of the mother on a trail run is that I could find a place to sit and contemplate why his words had stirred me, and maybe make that inexplicable explicable. And it came to me that your conversation had unearthed an emotion of another greatest run ever, one of the first times I ran on a trail not far from the setting of my previous submission, so beautifully read by you, and beautifully written, Stefan, by you last year. I had subconsciously thought about the Myra waterfalls, these gorgeous cascades that tumbled down over limestone hills through cool, leafy woods and forested glens. Photos show that I saw them first as a baby, but my first conscious memory of them was their image on the old Austrian stamps my father and I used to collect together. At age 14, we'd moved back to Austria, and one day in the spring, Dad and I went to the falls to spend a few happy hours out on the hills of the buckled world that was our home. We started our hike at the car park at the bottom of the falls and climbed our way up endless stairs, wooden bridges that crisscrossed the innumerable tiny and large falls. We stopped around the back of the hills on a kite tail that looped its way from the river and found again the weir at the top, ready to descend to the stairs and paths back to where we'd started. There we stopped looking, first at the ink-black water and along to the tiny hamlet below, shrouded by hills. I would go to the inn over there in the spring, my dad told me. Often they would have music and dancing. The owner was a terrible drunk and would always pay the patrons to buy him a drink. His wife wouldn't let him drink. She knew him too well, knew he couldn't just have one drink, but if a customer bought him one, then she couldn't stop him. So he paid them to buy him drinks. When she found out, she gave him one hell of a hiding. We looked at the inn nestled between the hills, but unusually we didn't continue up the path for a drink there. We started to head back down the hill with me in the lead. What happened next was so organic. Perhaps it was that Dad gave me a playful nudge, I'm not sure, but heading down the hill from the weir began at a fast walk that became a gentle trot, as though the soil itself was conspiring with gravity to pull me faster and faster. We came to a place where the stream ran parallel to the soft springy path before hooking in a zigzag between two towers of limestone, and suddenly we were running. We spread across the leaf-strewn paths, we clattered across bridges, setting up harmonic waves that set the timbers to swaying. We jumped down the little staircases, grabbed the railings to help us fly through the air, 4 or 5 stairs in each crazed leap. We ran together, and the whole time I could hear his breath. Every now and then one of us would laugh briefly as we ran together at the same speed. About a kilometre into this down, there's a big sweeping corner that hooked left across the earth embankment, and I ran up it like a skateboarder might travel along the edge of a bowl. Dad saw this chance and cutting across the inside, taking the lead, and then the chase was on. I can't remember how often we swapped that lead, but even then as a 14-year-old boy, I knew this wasn't about winning. This was about making each other run that little bit faster. A walk that took us more than an hour up was over in less than 15 on the way down. I don't know who got to the car first, but I do know who won. Both of us. The last time we went there was a few years ago. Dad had lost both his legs after illness and could not go beyond the car park in his wheelchair. We were both older and could no longer run at the same speed. We'd each moved into new lives and struggles, but he had looked up with a twinkle in his eye, and at that moment our thoughts, our memories were running in tandem, racing down through springy, leafy-strewn paths, clattering across bridges and jumping so far downstairs, so high that it was like flying.
Would you be a black t-shirt or the blue t-shirt for squad run, Matt?
I think that you know that question before you even asked it.
Black and blue. So those are our mates our mates at Squad Run. They've been coming on the show since a long, long time ago. You hear them regularly giving some incredible advice. You can avail yourself of that advice yourself if you sign up as a member of Squad Run and get some coaching from them. You can actually get yourself a 4-week special trial at the moment. If you check out the link on our website, which is www.dirtchurchradio.com, you'll find a special link for a 4-week special deal that the good folks at Squad Run have put together. Kerry and Ellie, they're also sponsoring Greatest Run Ever, so thanks Squad Run.
Thanks.
Stefan, that was beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Send them in.
Yeah, the rest of you, send them in. dirtchurchradio@gmail.com.
And
that delightful feeling when you are sort of impromptually, is that a word? Running faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with, obviously someone so special in your life. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And if you want to go back and check out Stefan's first Greatest Run Ever, which was just as beautifully written and such a pleasure to read as this one, head to our website.
Yeah.
They're in there. This was unabridged, of course, but some of them we will, we will edit for time, and they're in there unabridged, and there's quite a collection over,
There is.
nearly 300 odd episodes. So go check it out. Right. Here's my chat with Stephen Parker, author of There Is No Finish, the Backyard Ultra Story. Stephen Parker, welcome to Dirt Church Radio.
Oh, thanks very much, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so look, let's launch right in. We were just chatting offline about authorship and the art of writing books, and you've gone and written a book about backyard ultramarathons. There Is No Finish. So what possessed you in this day and age of shortened attention spans to sit down and write a book?
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, actually. I was sitting in a conference. There's a thing called the Global Leadership Summit. I was sitting there listening to a session from, I think it was James Clear, the guy who wrote Atomic Habits.
Right.
Really good speaker, fascinating stuff. No idea what he said. But he just said something that got me thinking about, I wonder if I should write a book. No one else has written a book about backyard ultras. I reckon there are so many amazing stories here. Someone's got to do it. I wonder if anyone else is doing it. And then by the time we finished that talk, I'd actually sketched a potential outline for what the book could be. I thought, yeah, this could actually work. But then I realised there were two potential problems. One was, what if someone else is doing it? Someone who's much, much better. What if Christopher McDougall has decided to write Born to Run 3 based on, backyard ultras? Yeah, there's no point. And then the other one is this Lazarus Lake guy seems to be like semi-mythical. Does he really even exist? Could you contact him without his cooperation, blessing? It'd be almost impossible to get off the ground. And so I'm thinking all this stuff while this conference is going on. And it occurred to me that if I could contact Lazarus somehow or other and get answers to both of those questions, is someone else writing it? Because you'd think he'd know. And would you actually be keen for this to happen? Then that would actually answer the question as to whether this is just the dumbest idea I've ever had or whether it could actually work. But I still spent most of that day thinking, pretty sure it's a dumb idea. then they get to the final speaker of this Global Leadership Summit, some guy, Ryan, someone, never heard of him before or since, but he was talking about how he'd tried to break into the NBA first as a player, failed, and then as a documentary maker, was failing, and then he just sent a whole heap of cold emails to a bunch of clubs saying, hey, can I come and do a documentary with you, blah, blah, blah. His final 2 sentences of his talk, which was the final 2 sentences of the day, was something along the lines of, you've got to be prepared to fail. What if I'd never sent that email? And I'm going, oh, okay, I've just been thinking, I don't know if I want to send an email to this guy I've never heard of and who've seen this documentary about. I thought, I really have to now after hearing that challenge. And then 2 days later, I'd been in contact and Laz went, yeah, sure, more than happy to help out. So what felt like just the dumbest, stupidest idea just very quickly began to snowball. And 11 months later, it's about to come out. So it's been a crazy roller coaster. So there's a long answer to a short question.
No, it's the that's the thing, isn't it? It's the best art, the best media, the best things start when someone decides that they're going to do them, right? I mean, and to be clear, a lot of substandard stuff starts when people decide that it's going to happen. But I guess regardless of the finished product, you have to commend anyone for just going, hey, look, I'm going to do this. What was your background? Are you someone who writes for a living, or are you someone who has a background in academia? Or
So I work in academia. So I write the occasional article, but it's normally like for academic journals that no one reads, and it's fairly obtuse stuff. So not really popular level stuff. This was a pretty new thing for me. I probably write. I did have a bit of a history of writing race reports, like probably 2 or 3 times a year. I'd write a long form race report on social media. Right. And a lot of my friends would say, oh, I don't care less about running, but that was a cool story. And I like telling stories overall. And so this seemed to be putting together my love of running and love of telling stories together, just in a bit of a longer form.
So funny, isn't it? Like we're in that space now with Strava being really, of course, it's been popular for a while, but the social media thing, and there's a lot of almost quite satirical stuff coming out about people, like your boy Scott Jurek, 8 Station Fireball, and in Australia you've got Trail Kings and heaps good runners and stuff like that, and they're putting out stuff around, the person who doesn't succeed at their race and then writes a long race report on Strava. But I look at those, the length of them, they're quite short to the stuff that we were banging out back in the day on like WordPress and pre-Instagram or on your blog spot. I mean, we were writing War and Peace.
Yeah. I'm writing like not as long as the old days, but I'm probably still writing 1,500 to 2,000 words on a race report, which is pretty long for Facebook. And I mentioned to someone the other day that, and I'll occasionally just do a company-wide email and just send it out to everyone else to say, look, I'm sure most of you won't care, but for those who do, like, here's a ripping yarn for you. So.
Right. You could serialize it. You could do like 500 words over 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Company on the Fridays. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, and the other question there is what, and I'm keen to get into sort of the process of engagement with Laz and what that looks like. But where did you? I guess the first step in this process is being engaged with Backyard Ultramarathons, which even within the sort of trail running space, a couple of years ago, pre-2000, sort of 17, 18, no one really knew what they were. Yeah. I mean, they've been going on for a long time. Had you been someone who'd had a long-term interest in them, or what was your sort of engagement with the sport?
Yeah, so I'd been following them for a few years. One of my friends, Andrew Southwell, he'd been doing the Clint Eastwood one, which is just 20 minutes from my house. He'd been doing it for a few years, and I'd kept noticing on social media, and I just thought it was the most bizarre idea ever. And then I'd noticed in 2000, the Quarantine Backyard Ultra, just an incredible race. Didn't find out about it until the final 2 runners were left, and they had this epic battle. It actually gets a good half chapter in the book, The Quarantine Backyard Ultra. Amazing race. And then I noticed that at the very end and thought, never even heard of it before. This is amazing. And then my friend, I started seeing him doing it, followed for a couple of years. For the first couple of years, though, I kept thinking, I actually think it's a dumb idea for a race. And fascinating, but dumb. And I thought it would be really bad for me because I get injured pretty regularly. And I have been like for 40 years, just different. I just rotate through my injuries. And I have noticed that if I start running after a bit of a break without warming up properly, that tends to make me more injured. And I thought a Backyard Ultra could be a recipe for disaster for me. But then eventually I just kept on following the races online and thought, I should give it a crack. And so by the time I'd only done 2 of them by the time I started writing the book, and did a 3rd one this year. And seriously, they're the best fun. Like every one it feels like an epic adventure. And I think it is that way for everyone who goes in them too. Because once you're pushing yourself to your limit, then you're only stopping for some bizarre reason. Like something is broken. Your nutrition, your body, your food, your support crew are going, come on, why don't you stop here? There's always some story behind it. And so put all those together and it's just the most fascinating event ever. It's got such different dynamics to any other race, I think.
What was your and what did you have it to compare to? Like, how did you get into?
Oh yeah,
have you always been someone who runs?
Yeah. So I've been running since I was about probably 11 or 12. I've done races. I'm 51 now. I'm pretty sure I've done at least a half marathon every year since I was 14. So I've been running regularly. Got into longer stuff. Probably about 2009, started doing adventure races. Lots of fun, love adventure races and Rogaines. That's probably my favourite sort of sport. I'm a Rogaine. And then I thought I'd try some trail ultras, and I jumped into the Blackall 100, which I should have done some other ultras before. Like I went straight from 42 to 100, so that almost destroyed me. And I've done the Scenic Rim 65 and the Guzzler 50. And so not a huge resume there. But, yeah, enough to know I just love it.
I think this is the thing, though. Like we, again, and not to be like a Luddite, but we get to this sort of, in the modern world, like if you thought about, anyone, when you were, say, 20 years old, running 100 kilometers or going to your workspace and saying, I ran 100 kilometers on the weekend or whatever, people would look at you like, unless you work in a trail ultra, unless you like work at Blue Mountains Running Company, people are going to look at you like, what? You did what?
Yeah.
It's still I think anyone who gets outside and does anything is to be, commended. But it's funny, isn't it? We get into the space of more is more, and more not necessarily is more, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes it's easy to look at other people around and compare yourself to them. So I follow Harvey Lewis and Sam Harvey, and you go, wow, they're racing every 2 or 3 weeks. They're training this massive volume. And, if I do 2 big races a year, then that's amazing. That's about what I can handle. Which to the rest of the world is still crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So look, I mean, what was your, in terms of your backyard experience? Talk me through the first. I mean, what was your first one?
Yeah, so I did it was called the States of Origin in 2022. The same site as the Clint Eastwood at Rocklee. Tiny event, only 21 people there, and I just loved it. I kept on doing lap after lap. And my support crew would say, how are you going? You were worried about injuries? You doing okay? And I just had this massive smile on my face and saying, this is so much fun. Why would you ever stop? It was just so enjoyable. And I actually managed to finish as the assist for that in 21 laps. So I was absolutely stoked. I was really pleased. And it was a team-based event as well. And so my sister and my best mate, we were a team together, and we worked out that if I got to 21, we'd win the teams. And so I went, cool, I'm happy with this. I'm not going to win because I knew the Nicole Jukes, I knew she'd done 30 laps before, and I thought, I can't do 30. This is my first time. So, beauty, I'll take an assist in 21 laps any day. And it was just such a thrill. It was so much fun. And then the event got cancelled the year after. Oh, sorry, I missed that.
No. And why was it cancelled? Because of the panda, or what was?
No. It got cancelled the year after just because not enough people enrolled. 21, they were really hoping to get more, and they actually got less the next year. So, which really sucked. We found out 5 days before the event.
Oh, it's a shame, eh? I mean, and that's the thing though with grassroots events, right? Like, I mean, I've been involved in one for 10 years, and every year you're kind of rolling the dice to see who, and it's that kind of thing. You have the heart starts to go before the last month, and looking at the entries creep up or not. So,
and when you have every second person enrolling at the last second, then you don't know how many people actually are going to do it at the last second, and that's going to be pretty hard as an organizer. Absolutely. So hats off to you.
No, it is a rock that you roll up the hill, right? But it's good. It feels quite good to give back to a community. But look, in terms of your engagement with the how have you found it? Running communities can be pretty niche, and for all our talk of like, yay, kumbaya, togetherness, all that sort of stuff, we can be a little bit scratchy and a little bit sort of, I don't know, gatekeepery sometimes. Yeah. How did you find it, the process of like approaching Laz, who's not, I don't think he is necessarily gatekeepy. He's certainly the law keeper. How did you find that process?
Good. Once I Googled hard enough and found his email address. He replied within a couple of days, and like sometimes a little bit slow in getting backwards and forwards, but I can't even imagine how many emails he must get and how many weird queries he gets coming his way. It's quite an empire he has to look after. So all respect to him. But yeah, he was great. He was really kind. Had a couple of Zoom chats with like fairly lengthy interviews, and then gave him a quick call a few other times just to clarify a few things, and just a huge number of emails because there's so many times I'd find something out, and I tried not to bug him too often, but just sometimes I'd get to a point where I went, this really doesn't make sense, and this source says this and this source says that, and how to, what's going to be right there. And that was a problem.
And did he? And did he say? I mean, I've met the man, and he can be quite mischievous. Did he set you straight, or did he obfuscate further?
He was actually pretty good. I was kind of thinking he was going to give me a few red herrings and send me off, but I think he was pretty legit in all his answers, because partly I think he's keen for what comes out to be accurate. So, yeah.
And what's the main sort of thrust of your book?
Yeah, so broadly, probably the first two chapters are doing the background of it. So the first chapter is just about Laz. What's his story? And it jumps into a bunch of the other races that he's done. So everyone knows he's done the Barclay Marathons, but he's done a bunch of other really just weird races too. And so I just briefly tell those stories, which personally I find fascinating to see all these crazy races. And then the next chapter is really about where the backyard itself came from, like looking at some of his earlier writings. He's been writing for Trail Runner magazine for decades. And if you look at some of the earlier stuff, you can see some of his early ideas he's then later brought into the backyard. And you can see, you can see the development of his ideas by looking through his old stuff. So I found that fascinating. And then look at his first race back in 2011 and how it began going over, growing around the world. And then I start looking at just some of the key races. So that Quarantine Backyard Ultra, the development of the satellite system. There's a full chapter on the Dead Cow Gully from, was it last year? Must have been 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Was it last year? No, it was last year.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was last year, yeah.
It was last year, yeah. There's a full chapter on that. That was an epic story. That was really hard to get right too, because there's so many different perspectives on what happened there. So trying to see, okay, what Sam said about it, what's Phil Gore said about it, what's Tim, the race director. Adam Keane, he'd written a really good race write-up of it, and that was one of the more helpful sources I used for that. So trying to piece all these bits together and tell that. And then did the 2022 Satellite Championships was just massive. That's the one that finished with a 101 lap draw in Belgium. And then it all leads up, telling all these big stories up to Bigs last year in 2023, when it really felt like the race had matured. And this was the first time you really had the best all coming together. And you knew that something big was going to happen there. And so the first 6 chapters are really introducing the characters, the Harvey Lewis, the Sam Harvey, the Phil Gore, the Belgium guys, bringing them all together. And then it's probably the biggest chapter. It was I don't know if you saw much of what happened, but it was just an amazing race. And for about, 4.5 days, I had my iPad next to me pretty much the entire time. And I was really quite fortunate because many times I'd be sitting down for breakfast or lunch, just staring at my iPad, and some really classic moments would just happen right in front of my eyes and go, no way. And then since then, I've then watched through all 108 hours of it again, just looking for all the other little stories that I'd missed in there. And, oh, okay, that's just bizarre. So just really tiny things springs to mind. It was about 70, 72 or so. One guy's finishing, the other guys are coming along, and then Frank, the tank, Galeen from Belgium, you see him running along through the starting area, and he jumps up in the air and does a heel click. This is after he's been running for literally 3 days. It's about 72 hours. That's 300 miles he's run for, and then just with a smile on his face, just jumps up in the air and clicks his heel. I think, what? How do you possibly... I actually can't do a heel click anyhow, just normally. But to have that much energy and to be that relaxed and comfortable and enjoying what you're doing, it's just a different level of performance. And so just, that's obviously not one of the big stories in the book, but that's the sort of stuff I noticed while going along through it. And then there's one chapter after that. Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, when you look at the sort of upper limits of human performance and something that wasn't, like you said, started 2011, or it's been going for a long time, actually. I'm sure he's been running these races in his backyard forever, but it comes into that sort of that consciousness, and then you've got it. For I guess for us, it was the thing when Katie Wright won at Riverhead. So it was the inaugural. It was the Riverhead relapse, and Katie Wright became the first woman in the world to win a backyard. Yes, and she got the golden ticket. That fact's
in the book. Nice. Yeah,
she got the golden ticket, and went to and then went to Barclay. Not Barclay. She didn't go to Barclay, but she went to she went to Laz's house, and they and they did the bigs, and she was in the top 4. Along
that's
with
pretty
another
impressive.
Key. So that,
you
so, that was the kind of
it feels, definitely.
Yeah, we love a per capita. We really do. So,
anytime I watch the Olympics, I'm always thinking, oh man, Australia's doing so well. Oh, what if it was on a per capita basis? Yeah, they should judge it that way. And then someone does show me the per capita, and New Zealand's way in front of us. I went, okay, let's not do it that way.
Yeah. There's not that many of us. To be fair. What do you reckon about the satellites? It's an interesting. And for those who don't know, so part of the way it's sought to get, you got the bragging rights, but you also, Laz has got his piece of paper in his book, and he's got it in his pocket. And I've seen him do it. He pulls it out of his pocket, and he scribbles names down, and he scribbles things down in his pocket. He puts it back in his pocket. It's such an interesting concept, isn't it? Because everyone's running different terrain. Yeah. Everyone's running at different times. Everyone's running at different, different seasons, depending on what hemisphere you're in. Like having been at the New Zealand one a couple of times, my wife and I, we actually ran out because it was in the forest that we live on the border of. We ran out to the start one night, and it was sort of as the crow flies, it's like 8-9K. It was 11 o'clock at night. We ran over the hill and to go and hang out at the start, and it was bloody grim. And it was this weird kind of, it looked like the world's oddest Zoom call. You had the TV with everyone up on there. But what do you make about that? Like, you've got guys in Belgium saying there's no shade on Belgium running around like a reasonably flat track, and then you've got people in New Zealand running around like with 175 meters of vertical gain. It's a tricky one. So Laz actually reckons there's no such thing as a hard course or an easy course, because he said that even if you get a really easy course, then it just becomes a psychological battle. Personally, I don't buy it. I reckon the psychological battle is so much harder if it's also hard physically. So you just get to the psychological problems earlier. So, I think any team that has a relatively flat course has an advantage. So, kudos to Belgium. The impression I'm getting from the Australian team over in Perth is that they're deliberately trying to make their course as best as it possibly can for the runners, which I don't think necessarily is dead flat all the way. You want some slight terrain changes, and you don't want it to be bitumen or concrete. You really want some softer stuff that won't get muddy. Is your ideal, I think. But you don't want too much, hill or single track. You want to be able to run together in groups. Makes it so much easier. So the American team, on paper, they're all the favourites by far, but they've also got one of the hardest courses out there. And it sounds like your course is not particularly easy. Right. The first one was the traditional sort of what they call the relapse course, which is on like clay, gravel, some single track. It's got a climb. It's but it's very similar to. It's not similar in terrain because you've got all the sort of the shale and rock in Tennessee, but it is similar in vertical gain to that. But then it's also been out in a sort of a more kind of open, expansive sort of almost like a bridle path setting, and it's in the South Island this year, so it's in a place called Timaru, and I don't know what the course looks like there, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
I can't wait. I think it's just the most exciting concept, because like to have, I think they're up to 63 countries all effectively doing their national championships. So there'll be 63 national champions crowned, and then one winning country with whichever 15 people go the most, but also then there'll be the bragging rights for whichever country goes furthest. So last time America won the teams, but Belgium got the bragging rights for they went further than anyone else. And then there's all the winners nationally. So there's so much to be watching. And previously every winner got a free ticket to Bigs. So I think last time there were 37 countries, and so out of 75 competitors, 37 of those 37 winners get to go to the World Individual Championships. But this year, because it's gone bigger, he doesn't want to increase the 75 capacity. So it might have changed, but what I'd last heard was there was only 50 tickets from winning the satellites. So out of those 63 countries, you've got to make sure that if you win it, you're one of the top 50, not the bottom 13, because those guys don't get the ticket to Tennessee next year, and that's something that's pretty attractive. People want to go there. So you don't want to be the country that wins with 12 laps and go, oh man, I don't get to go to the big dance.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's such an interesting in that space. It's such a I have lots of thoughts about backyard ultramarathons. I jumped into one this year for the first time.
Which one was that?
As a trainer, it was relapse.
Oh yeah, nice.
So it was the one. So it's it's home course. It's Sean's a dear friend. It's something that, Rebecca and I have been involved in, helped and been up and been there and, been there for the moments and, but decided to very impulsively a couple of weeks before a race, jump in for a longer training run. And nice. It was good fun, in a very and the environment was very, very cool. But also, it's such an individualistic sport. Like, it really is, isn't it? It's that sort of rugged individualism at the end, because it's at the end. It's two people, but at the end, it's one person. There can only be one person who wins.
Yeah. See,
so
yeah.
No. Yeah.
I find it funny that you do call it an individualistic thing, because to me it's so community focused. Because every lap you're all starting together. And so like when I ran the Blackall 100, I had hours just running by myself at different points.
Yeah.
And that was after my friend and I split up for a while, and then I just was running by myself. And occasionally you bump into someone and you might chat to them for 20 minutes or so, and then you're by yourself again for hours. In this, you start off, like most of the time you can be with someone else chatting away. And it's that constant reset each lap that, to me, makes it really sociable. Towards the end of the race, though, then it does start getting a little bit funky. And that's when you start getting the mind games happening.
That's interesting for the team, isn't it? Because you've got that. And you're right. And I particularly enjoyed both of those aspects of it. I was like, this is great. Got to run with some really cool, like friends and people who I know, and we ran together, and you're right, that reset, it's interesting, isn't it, how quickly your body goes, well, I'm good actually, and your mind goes, well, I'm good, and we'll just start again, and everyone's all excited. But it is funny, isn't it, towards the end, and especially in a team environment, isn't it, you're going for the individual, you're going for the team thing, but there's also that interplay of how hard do you lead out someone? How hard do you stick as a group? Is it one person off the front? Is it, and there's dealing with all those, you've got a bunch of competitive people. Yeah. There's bound to be some tension there too, hey?
Yep. Yeah, and so the satellites are a really different dynamic psychologically to any of the other races, because in theory, they all should be trying to cooperate and say, hey, keep going, let's all stick together, no one drop out. Well, normally you're actually happy if someone drops out. But here they're all desperately trying to both increase their number of team points, but also the more of your mates that keep going, the more chance you have of getting a personal best or a world record, whatever the case may be. So that it is quite different. But will everyone make that switch to, hey, this is a team thing? So earlier this year, at Dead Cow Gully here in Australia, Ryan Crawford, James Blanton, Sam Harvey were all coming to that. And they're all saying, "Yep, let's try and go all the way, set a world record, blah blah blah, get our PBs, let's work together." But then once they'd gone for a couple of days, then you start seeing them go, "Nah, we just want this over with. Let's just try and fight it out." And then they Sam knocked him out and took the win fairly well. But it's easy to aim for teamwork and then. I really just want to win this race. And so then you act in ways that will make that happen.
Yeah, that's a fine line, eh? That's a really fine line. And we've seen, it's happened at Riverhead Relapse, where there's been no winner.
Yeah.
Because both of the two have timed themselves out playing silly buggers in the bush, trying to slow down, speed up, and there was no winner one year, which was quite, I think quite devastating for the two people involved. So.
Yeah, that was one of the Sam Harvey ones, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually mentioned
Sam Harvey and Craig Torr. Yeah.
It was a pretty funny story, I thought, as an outsider.
Yeah, it didn't. It and again, it wasn't funny when you were there. It wasn't funny. It was maybe it was funny afterwards in hindsight, but they've been up for a good couple of days at that point.
You'd be devastated, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I guess as Lazarus said, attention to detail is very important. Who did you talk to? Like, you got Lazarus, obviously. Who else did you sort of interview for the book?
So I only had a few interviews. Phil Gore was another one. Had some really good chats with him, and did lots and lots and lots of email questions with people though. So probably about 130 athletes. And there's a spectrum in there. Probably 20 or 30 of them were just, hey, here's a couple of sentences. Have I got this right? To the, here's 3,000 words that are written about you. Is that okay? Or, hey, here's 10 questions. Can you answer all these for me? So there was a broad spectrum within those 130 people. But basically, I was just digging as hard as I can to try and find the best stories. And to be frank, I actually did contact a lot more people early on to say, hey, can I come and interview you? And most people actually never replied to my email. But when I then did all the research myself and then responded, got the bits I could do, then I found most people were more responsive to much shorter emails. Is this right? Give me a yes or a no on that. And then I found so many people ridiculously helpful. So just, yes, really quite kind and generous. And then some people I'd be chasing for months and months. And then there was one guy after about 5 months finally replied and was so helpful and generous. And I'd been so wanting to talk to him. But by then I'd pretty much written everything. So I just tweaked a few paragraphs here and there. But yeah, so I've been chasing everyone. Well, not even close to everyone, but so many people. And it's been lots of fun because I kept on finding more and more stories and go, oh, beauty, haven't heard of that one before. And then they'd send me down chasing another way and then try and fact check that. And because that's one of the problems too, that the facts aren't that simple. So you find a race report or, the DUV website that records all the ultra results. So you think, oh yeah, this is like the Bible, I can trust this. And you go, no, it turns out you can't. Over and over again, you find people have put the wrong results on or their race reports are wrong. And so I even sent out drafts of the book and people would go, okay, no, I love it, but you've got this fact wrong, this fact wrong. But I've got this source here and this source here and, what do you do? And so that's why I did so much fact checking. Most people I've mentioned, I've contacted them to say, can you please check this? And I'm sure there's still mistakes in what I've done, but at least everything has been looked at by lots of runners multiple times too. So it's probably as good as it'll get.
What a process.
Oh yeah. So exhausting, but so much fun too.
Much like a backyard, did you ever get to the point where you were like, were there any moments of, any moments of doubt, any moments of, oh gosh, what are we going to do here? Is this not a fool's errand, but is this, a labour of love that is perhaps not going to get around that next lap, or were you dead set all the way?
To be honest, I was pretty committed. So once I'd written my first chapter, because I wasn't sure whether there actually would be a book in this. I thought those 8 chapters might just be 2,000 words each, and a 16,000 word thing is just a really big blog post. But then once I wrote the first chapter, I went, oh yeah, no, there's a lot more I can do here. And it'll be a case of trimming it down, not trying to pad it out. So I was always pretty confident. My biggest bit of uncertainty, though, was once I'd finished my draft, and then got an editor to look at it and then add a bunch of improvements and a whole heap of fact-checking. But once I got to something that I thought I could publish this, I then sent it out to about 25 top runners around the world and said, can you please have a look? Can you please read the entire thing? And you know how books often have the blurbs of, hey, this was the greatest book ever, blah, blah, blah. I thought, I want to get a lot of the best runners to look at this and from all around the world. So I think I've got like 14, 15 different countries represented. So I tried to spread them out and not just have all Aussies saying it was great. So spread it out as much as possible. And then So, and then can you give me a blurb that I can put in the book to help with promotion, all that sort of stuff? That was the bit where I was wetting my pants, because you send it all out and you've got no idea. Like, I'm hoping everyone comes back saying, yes, this is the greatest piece of literature that I've ever read. This makes Born to Run look like, children's writing. Everybody in the world should buy this. Like, so that's what I want. But what if just the worst thing is that nobody replies? Because if you see something's crap, then that's what you do. Like, you don't write back and say, oh no, I read it and I think it's awful. You just ignore the person. But, is that what's going to happen? And it took a couple of weeks before I started getting any replies. And I got an early reply of, yeah, I didn't really read it much. Okay, that's because it's awful, right? Of course, and that's where your brain starts going, oh no, I have wasted the last year of my life. But then every couple of days, one would start coming back through, and then I'd run around and tell my family, this guy said this person said this, and okay, Dad, we've never heard of that person before, but I'm sure it's a big deal for you that person said something. And it was really quite encouraging, because this was people who, had been at Biggs, were part of the story, saying, yep, you got the story right, and I loved reading it. I went, oh, thank God. Okay, cool. But until that moment, yes, I was scared as.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's so grounding with your family. I think it's been one of the best things, doing this for 6 years. And I think that, I know both Rebecca and Suzanne could probably list on the no fingers how many episodes that they've listened to, and that's great. Like, it's a real and very supportive, and obviously, but and everyone's like, oh, Dad's doing that thing that they do. It's nice it keeps you anchored, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So my wife's amazing there, because she does not care less about running at all, and just thinks it's all a waste of time. Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that's so helpful. But it's nice to keep me grounded, as you were saying.
Absolutely. And provide a contrast, isn't it? Because it's easy to get swept up in this world, and it's easy for it to become all-consuming, and something that I think as runners we tag our we can make running our whole thing, right? Our whole identity can be that. It's nice to have that kind of space where you're perhaps not the book guy or the podcast guy or the backyard guy, but you're just your dad or your husband or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you reckon about, and I thought about this question, challenges for the backyard format moving forward? Have you considered anything like that?
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of things. There's the women issue as to how they handle that. In one of my earlier drafts, I was actually thinking of having a chapter exploring that issue, but then I decided that it would actually be a boring chapter compared to the rest. And tell you what, that'll get complicated. So the women issue is simply that Laz is very keen to not have categories at all within the Backyard Ultra, and so the winner is the best person, and there's not a men's category and a women's category. And so that gets controversial in some areas, because last year at Biggs, there were only 4 of the 75 competitors were females there. All amazing ladies, all fantastic. But it's plausible that in a couple of years' time there'll be 0, and that would be a tragedy. So there's a quite a bit strong debate there with very strongly held opinions. So that'll be an interesting thing in the longer term.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you step away from it. I mean, he is very much a man of his time.
Yes.
And he's a man of his cultural context, which is, again, that sort of that notion. He doesn't come from a society like yours or mine, which is much more sort of a collective, right? It's based on rugged individualism at its heart, and there's that sort of, we're all free to pursue this dream and we are all equal, which,
yeah.
how tall are you?
About 186 or so, yeah.
Right. So I'm like good 15 centimeters smaller than you. So it's that whole thing around the box thing, isn't it? Like if we're both trying to see over the same fence, do you get the same box as I do?
Yeah.
Is that equal? Is that equity or is that equality? So, and I mean, I'm thinking about, like what was it? Who was the human being that you said that you got the assist to?
Oh, Nicole Jukes, yeah.
Nicole Jukes, amazing. I mean, I'm thinking like I just listed down like Hadani Woodruff, Jane McAlpine, Helen Waterworth, Brooke Thomas, Katie Wright, of course, Maggie Guterl, who won the thing.
Courtney Dauwalter's won as well.
Courtney Dauwalter's won as well. And that's just 8-9 women off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing, isn't it? You get that sort of, excuse me, you get that. Some people are like, I want to go and turn up and race everyone. And if we look at it from the perspective of, and I'm hopeful that people aren't getting all defensive about this because I think it's a worthy conversation to have. Is it that thing like you said? Yeah, you're going to get to the point where you're having no women represented. Does that sit in terms of the modern space? Does that sit in terms of like where we're going for a sport and the values as a sport we want to kind of get along? I certainly don't have the answer to that, but I think it's good to highlight. Hey,
yeah, definitely. So personally, I've got 4 daughters, so that was part of what was going through my head in that first race of mine. I knew that no female had ever won a proper backyard ultra in Australia, and so I thought, cool, I am more than happy to have a lady win this. So to me, I actually saw it as a positive thing. Even if I regretted it ever since, going, oh man, I reckon I could have kept going. But yeah, so it's a big issue, how that's going to play out. And to be honest, I suspect it won't change until Laz lays down his whistles. And, And then that'll be the other big issue of what happens in a post-Laz world, which hopefully is still decades away. But what happens then does the world championship system based on with the huge carrot of I want to go to Tennessee for bigs, will that still work if he's sold up and moved to Florida? And where becomes the center? Do you have a rotational system where there's a different place in the world that becomes the world championships that everyone's desperately trying to get to there? And so one year it's Riverheads. And so everyone's going, yeah, beauty. That's all I want to do, just get to Riverheads. If I can get there, then I'll have made it. So like that could work, but then who becomes the decision maker? So as you said before, Laz is the guy he's the one who makes the calls. He says, yes, this is right, this is wrong. And so yes, there's the rules, but the interpretation of the rules is also the tricky part. So he's effectively the Supreme Court of the backyard ultra world. So like the laws are there, which he wrote, but also he's the one who gets to interpret them and then sets precedents and creates new case law for the future. So in the future, someone else will have to take that role, even if it's 50 years down the track. So what does that look like?
So I mean, what do you have any notion of what that might look like?
I would assume that it'll be something like a combination of race directors around the world could start off in some form of cooperative manner and agree to pass around the world championships and then have some form of collective group. Maybe it becomes part of the Ultra Running Association worldwide and just becomes a sub-branch of that. We're a bit weird though, so maybe not. But I would think probably informal structures would be based on relationships would be the healthiest thing. But again, hopefully we're talking decades in the future. So,
and there's also been the thing, and these are questions from a fan of the sport and a student of the sport. But again, they're worth discussing. There's been the discussion, and I know that some ultra runners have talked about the fact people talk about it as a world record. Harvey Lewis 108. And how it's not essentially a ratified world record; it's an informal world record versus I can't remember his name, Sorokin, who just goes out and just destroys I don't know how many hundreds of kilometers in 24 hours. Where do you see that going? Could we have backyards at the Olympics? I mean, you'd have to have a cap on it, but
look, I'm sure it'll never be in the Olympics, but I would love it. It's just, well, for one thing, it'd suddenly become an event that, oh boy, I would start training a lot harder and desperately try to, because it's one of the few sports where age isn't an advantage. Because backyards are more about being able to go slow and long, endurance, strategic wisdom, like the stuff that gets better with age is what goes with backyards. And I think it'll be perfect. Imagine the Olympics is on. You've normally got 2 or 3 channels on TV following it anyhow, and TV channels normally love to get content. Well, insert name of TV network here. We can give you another channel where for the entire time the Olympics are on, or at least an entire week of the Olympics, people can turn on, go to that channel and watch the Backyard Ultras. What you need to do is have some really good commentary in the breaks, because I find most backyard footage that you see on YouTube or wherever is really fun at the start of the hour and in the 10 minutes beforehand. As everyone's coming in, you get the interviews with them in their gazebos. That's fascinating stuff. But as soon as everyone goes out there, it's fun watching them for a couple of minutes, and then you just get bored. But if you had someone going, so we're on lap 48 now, and here's what's happening. And for those of you who've come in late, this is what a Backyard Ultra is. And you can just sort of explain it all, give some profiles of the athletes. There's lots and lots that you could do there. I think it could be a fascinating thing for coverage, whether for the Olympics or something else. It'll never happen. But
you'd need to ratify, wouldn't you? You need to, again. There's that sense of standardization. Although I enjoy watching someone's mum cook a cheese quesadilla on just stagger out of the tent and go along and cook a cheese quesadilla. Do you think that? I don't know, man. And this is an encouraging. I hope your book goes into several editions. I really do, and I hope it's a massive success. And I hope you do crack a chapter in there about the women's thing, because I think it's actually, I'd say that's the kind of, it's current. And yes, you're right. I don't have to write the bloody thing, because you could consider it is people have very strong opinions for it, as they should. And but yeah, I guess in that sense, the backyard kind of both transcends, you could say it's this very kind of stuck in time thing, but it's an area where you've got this kind of, it does sit in the cultural, our immediate cultural gestalt, you talk about like, you've got different people thinking different things, you've got different women thinking different things, and different men thinking different things, and then you've got Laz, who's just like, nothing ever changes. And it's just the best person who wins. Is there room for everything? I don't know. Yeah. No, there's a lot to explore there, and although I can definitely see the other side, I also have got so much respect for Laz as well, and it's hard to push too hard against him, because just the ingenuity of this guy, the kudos that he's built up, that just he's created so many amazing events, which are just ridiculous. That he's got so many runs on the board. Yes, we can think, oh yeah, I disagree on this and this, but mate, none of us have done anything like what he's done. Yeah. I just froze there. It looks like. No, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, I guess, and the counterpoint, do you know the rapper Mos Def? Have you ever heard of Mos Def?
Oh, I know the name, but I don't know the music. Yeah,
there's a song called Rock and Roll, and he says, he's talking about the blues, and he said, you may like the Rolling Stones, but they didn't come up with that on their own. Have you met Sandra? Have you met his wife?
No, I think I might have exchanged a couple of messages, but I haven't spoken to her. No.
I mean, much like all of us, I would argue that woman's the brains of the operation. So, maybe there is that thing of, there's always the team. It's a team sport, right? Life's a team sport. But tell me where are you at in the process of getting the book out?
Yeah, so what's today? Thursday. So it officially launches Saturday week, so 10 days from now. 9 days from now, And so I'm going to have a launch in the hall up the road from me. So that'll be pretty exciting. It'll probably be similar to this. I'll just tell a bunch of stories, and then hopefully, sell some of the books. And then on that date, it'll then be available in a few independent bookstores and on online stores all over the place. So that'll be pretty exciting. And then I'll be begging people to put reviews on Amazon and Goodreads to help the algorithms. So when people go to those bookstores, they go, "Oh yeah, cool. This starts coming up high," because it turns out reviews, even if the reviews saying this sucks, it still boosts up the algorithm. Anyway, so that the launch is coming up. Really excited about that, and I've got so much to do between now and then for that. But one of the things is I've got an e-version that's all sorted. I've got the paper version. I've got a bunch of them just floating around there. It's
such a nice cover.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm really happy, and I was really scared before it arrived. I thought, oh, what if this doesn't work? And when I just picked it up and put it in my hands, I went, this is beautiful. It's like my baby that I've worked so hard on for the last 9 months, but with less pain. But I also wanted an audio version, and
brilliant.
So I've actually spent a fair bit of time on that today and the last couple of weeks. I've been recording it and then editing it, but I never realised how many mistakes I make when I'm speaking. So I've heard myself a few times in this. I've thrown a few ums or said the wrong word, but reading a book, you become so aware. So I go through looking. Oh, and when you make a mistake, when you're reading a book, the trick is you say beep, and so then you can go and look at the audio file, and you can see this big spike in the wave. So normally there's a nice wave like that, but when you suddenly see a beep there, then to go back. So I've gone through fast forwarding, pull out all the beeps, and I thought that's good enough. And then one of my friends said, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny if you missed some beeps?" And I went, "Yeah, okay. I really need to spend the time." So I spent a couple of days just listening through it all on fast forward, and I found I'd missed 3 or 4 beeps in every single chapter. Okay, that's not cool. So now I'm going back through it all really slowly, and I'm finding so many times I'm talking and I'm putting ums before words, and okay, let's edit that out. It's fine in casual conversation, but if someone's paid money to be listening to an audio book, they're running a Backyard Ultra, they're listening to this book as they're going, and then just not what you want.
It's a 21st century problem, though, isn't it? Like, I'm sure that McDougall and Asquith were recording their own audiobook, and I would rather have, I think, my fingers cut off and then write a book on a keyboard rather than read my own audiobook by myself. So kudos to you, sir. Are you going to do my 2 favorite runner, or 2 of the best, you could say that they're talk about the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, or Rolling Stones and the Beatles, or whoever, like Feet in the Clouds, Born to Run. They both sort of came out at the same time. One's British, one's American, and both the authors were, McDougall and Richard Asquith were there at races with the boot of their car open, with books selling, hawking books. You got a plan for grassroots? You're going to get out some backyards and flick open your...
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm actually not sure yet. Like, I actually hate the self-promotion stuff, but I've got to. I have to. And that will have to be part of it. So I'll be trying to talk to run directors and try to work out what I can do there. Because a book can be brilliant and go terribly, and it can be really good. Or it can be a rubbish book, but somehow or other it just takes off. Like, sometimes you hear a book and it's at the top of the bestsellers, and you read it and go, that was rubbish. So it can go either way. So I figure with every book that does well, there's been something that's clicked.
It's alchemy, magic,
man. And you never know what it is. So what I'm trying to do is do absolutely everything I can. So to just do everything that is in my control, I will do it. And if I try 1,000 things and one of them works, it might be that this podcast goes, oh, wow, it's suddenly taken off, or who knows.
Well, I hope people do listen. I hope people listening do buy the book, and I hope people listening, and that's the thing, isn't it? You get a sense of someone listening to it. You get a greater sense meeting them face to face. But this is the thing. I mean, man, what a labor of love, and congratulations. Look, Stephen, you've been so generous with your time with me tonight, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to ask you last question. It's the same question we ask everyone who comes on Dirt Church Radio, and that's Stephen Parker. What's been your greatest run ever?
My greatest run ever?
Yeah. Doesn't have to be a race.
It'd have to be the Blackall 100. Yeah, 2018. Just as my first real ultra, it was an epic run that just destroyed me. I often describe it as the best day of my life and the worst day of my life in the same thing. So much fun.
Fantastic. And have you got any, you've knocked this out now, have any plans to sort of go out and promote by doing another backyard?
Yeah. So I'm signed up to the Australian Backyard Masters at Dead Cow Gully next year. And that's going to be great because it's got about, Tim Walsh, the race director, is paying half the flights for about a dozen top runners from around the world all coming together. It'll be the biggest event in the world apart from Biggs next year. And it's almost guaranteed to get a world record set at it. It's going to be huge. And I think there's 20 to 25 people I know of that are going to be there that have helped me at some stage in the book. So I thought, I have to go there just to say thank you to all these people. And while I'm there, I want to give it a red hot crack and do a bit of a run. And of course, I'll also tell my support crew as well. So your job is partly to support me, but also if you could, try and sell some books while you're there, that'd be nice too.
Yeah, you got to get that car boot, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, look, thank you so much. And last thing, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I've got a website, runningforever.au, and then on Facebook and Instagram, it's just the Backyard Ultra Story is the tag on both of those. But runningforever.au has got links to everything, so you can pre-order copies of the book there, and there's links to everything and all sorts of other information. It's all pretty amateur stuff, but yeah, it'll get you there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Oh, thank you very much.
There we have it.
There we go.
I mean, who'd write a book?
What lunatic would write a book?
It looks like really hard work.
I wouldn't know. Yeah. No, it's and like you said at the start, doing it yourself, doing all the hard yards yourself, including the audiobook. Smart move for a running book, though, I've got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Amazing chat. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you very much for tuning in. We're on social media at Dirt Church Radio. You can email us at dirtchurchradio@gmail.com. Now, don't forget to sign up to the new podcast and newsletter.
Don't forget to write in with your greatest run ever. We'd love to hear from you with them. If you've already sent one in, be like Stefan, send us another one. No doubt you've had another greatest run. And you can have a read of them on the website and then get inspired. Send them to us, dirtchurchradio@gmail.com.
Thanks to our supporters for the Faster and Squad Run and our Substack subscribers and the DCR Aid Station crew. Stay tuned for our show in 2 weeks when we have another great guest lined up, and check out DCR Aid Station next week.
Hey, whanāu. Hey, whanāu.
Thanks, Rigby. If you want to get the DCR hit that you love ad-free and get it every single Wednesday, there's a way to do that. Sign up to become a member of the DCR Aid Station crew, $8 a month or $80 a year. Paid subscribers get full access to the newsletter featuring recommendations, reviews, and the special sauce. Special sauce is quite cool, isn't it, Matt?
Maybe I've been drinking from the special sauce bottle a bit much lately, but really enjoy putting together the content, really love bringing it out to the people, and the people really love it too. So yeah, get involved, support Dirt Church Radio. We've been cracking on for 6 years now, and we really love bringing this to you. So help us help you to help us help you, helping us.
You can find a link on the website, which is www.dirtchurchradio.com.